Hey, it's the podcast guy.
It's the Sutton Podcast.
And there it is! Sutton United at the GM Vauxhall Conference have put out First Division Coventry City, winners of the FA Cup themselves less than 2 years ago. And what a moment to enjoy for the fans of this Surrey side. They've had their moments before, but never one like this. But the whistle goes now. Delight for Sutton United. Sutton United from the National League are through to the last 16 of the FA Cup. No longer English football's perennial non-league club. A 123-year crescendo reaches a new peak for Sutton United, who are promoted to the Football League for the first time.
Stone at Crystal Palace, the Amateur Cup final against North Shields, and the FA Cup tie against Leeds. So not glory hunting or anything. We got to a stage in the mid-70s where I wanted to start, when I was like 13 or 14, I wanted to possibly start going to football games without him having to take me. And I was about 15 minutes walk away from Sutton's ground, and just thought I'd wander down, sort of start following them, watch a few games, and it sort of mushroomed from there. I think started going to away games on the supporters coach, started chatting to people on the supporters coach like Dave Fairbrother, who persuaded me to get involved with quizzes and stuff like that. Moved on to the supporters club committee, helped Simon Clennell, the previous programme editor, with the programme, because I always enjoyed writing about football. And when he emigrated in 1988, I stepped into his shoes as press secretary, and that's where I've been ever since. So it's 30 odd years now, and sort of responsible for the media. During which time a lot has changed, most for the better.
Yeah, I mean, well, we were talking just before we came on. The sort of media manager thing is a sort of a loose term, because back even a few years ago, lots of articles in the Guardian, for example, the local Guardian. Now, not so much, and now most of it has moved on to digital. How was that kind of shift from your point of view?
Well, yeah, but the Sutton Guardian used to cover us every week, being hard copy. And I one slight disclaimer: I don't live in Sutton anymore at the moment, so I don't know necessarily whether the Guardian is whether it's the paper you can pick up. Where I live, you can pick up a paper called the News Shopper in supermarkets. But I don't know whether the Guardian's the same. But they tend now. I think the way the Guardian works, it now covers the whole of southwest London rather than just being a Sutton Guardian. So I think we've been squeezed out a little bit by the Wimbledons and Brentfords of this world. But it has changed. You know, it's not so much newspaper driven now. When the Sutton Guardian were covering us every week, we didn't have a website. Now it's our website where all the news items go, and so the local paper is less important for people to find out what's going on. I mean, we didn't just have the Guardian; we had the Herald and the Advertiser as well back in the day when I was when Simon was doing it, and I was writing reports for them even then. But now, you know, if people want to know what's happening at the club, we've got our own website where the news goes up straight away, and that's where I'm responsible for posting. I would have said 95%, possibly more, of the articles that go on the website come from me. And I deal with all the media arrangements on match day, and occasionally do some commentaries on the iFollow system. We've got a very, very good team of commentators on the iFollow who do the iFollow commentaries from the SUFC TV school. But you know, sometimes it needs me to drop in as well. And I enjoy doing that, so I'm quite happy to step into that as well. So it's just looking after the media on match days as well. Not so much the Twitter side of things. That's Martin, who's the digital marketing media manager. But certainly the sort of more what I call the traditional media, if you like, is down to me. And as people are probably very aware and have probably had enough of it now, that I've also been doing the PA for the best part of 35 years. And I always think that they must surely sometime soon somebody will say, let's have a new voice over it. But it's not an easy job to find someone to do.
No, absolutely not.
And you know, I'm lucky with Jason Reynolds, is one of the commercial managers, is as a background in radio. So if I'm ever not able to make it, then he's able to step in, and he's very good at it. But it's not something that people. Nobody's ever come up to me and said, "Cool, could I have a go at doing the PA?" And so I get used to it, but it does come. It must. I do feel I've done for the last 2 or 3 seasons that whenever people walk into the ground for the first game of the season and they hear me, they think, "Oh no, not him again." But maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. But who knows?
Well, to be fair, on the far side of the curve,
you can't hear it anyway.
Never really works anyway.
No,
so
it always used to be a standing joke that there was one stage when the PA system worked in such a way that we got complaints inside the ground that they couldn't hear me, and complaints from the other side of the bypass that they could.
Brilliant.
And that may still be the case.
There's only been 2 times I've had to hear it, and I've heard both. One is I dropped my bank card once, and it was announced, and the other is I left my daughter and my nephew alone for like 2 minutes when I went to talk to someone, turned around, and they managed to get themselves into Alison's shop. She took them around to do a lost child announcement. So like,
we don't have
literally
lost child announcements. It's mainly badly parked cars.
Yes.
Or last week, I think the excitement amongst the Farmers supporters was such that several of them jumped up in the air so much their keys fell out. But no, it tends to be badly parked cars where
4 sets of keys, I think it was, that was lost over the weekend. But on the media thing and the way it's changed, I mean, for a lot of people, especially newer fans who are used to how things are now, it would just seem absolutely mad to think that they had to wait for the news from the club till the following Thursday or whenever the paper came out.
Yeah.
And now, if we're not getting updates on Twitter straight away of exactly what's happening, people are saying, "Well, why aren't we being told?"
No, I know.
We used to have club call as well.
That was me as well.
People remember that?
Yes, that was
you as well?
That was me as well. That was almost entirely me. And that was that sort of bridged the gap, if you like, between. I mean, I know what you mean about the local papers, but you used to go to the game and then you'd wait until I think it was Wednesday lunchtime that the papers normally got delivered to the news agency. You'd wait till then to see the match report and see what if they thought the same as you did of the game. But there wasn't the immediacy now. For instance, after a Saturday game, I'll be getting the match report done. What I tend to do, because there's a lot else going on, I tend to put an abridged one on at the club before I leave, and then do a longer one when I get home. But the idea to me now of a match report not being available within 6 hours of the end of a game. There are times away from home where it's a bit more complicated, particularly if I've been helping out with commentary as well. But if you think, back to the 70s, it used to be game on a Saturday and a Tuesday night, and then you'd see about it in the papers on Wednesday and Thursday, and any news that the club wanted brought out, that would also be on Tuesday, on the Wednesday or Thursday in the local paper. And in some ways, there was less pressure because you knew that's when it was going to go out, and you had time to think about what you wanted to say and give it to the local papers, unless it was something really major and you wanted it in the nationals as well. But as you say now, if we sign a player, and of course with the internet now signing players, there's always 2 clubs involved, and fortunately most clubs are pretty good at coordinating between each other so that the announcement gets made at exactly the same time. It's the same with pre-season friendlies or sort of rearranged fixtures, that you'll get in touch with the other club and you'll agree a time to announce. Occasionally it doesn't happen, and suddenly somebody will, and particularly in Twitter as well now, it's not unknown for players who get transferred to get excited on Twitter and go, delighted to have joined Sutton. They do that at 1 o'clock when the clubs have agreed to announce it at 3 o'clock. We always look as though we're behind the ball, but it's much more immediate now, and people do want things more urgently, and it has to be done, because if it's not done, then it'll come out somewhere else. Gone are the days when you could actually try and hide something, and always remember it's long enough ago that I doubt whether any of the people involved I think we had a pre-season friendly once where a player got sent off, and there was a suspicion that the referee might not report it because it was only a pre-season friendly, and so I was deputed by the then manager and secretary and everything. So can you write the match report without mentioning the sending off? And it would have worked had the sports editor of the local paper not been at the game and phoned me up the following day when I sent in my report saying, you haven't mentioned anything about that. So even then you couldn't get away with it. But it's nowadays, yes, there is more pressure to get things out quickly because, if you don't, then it'll come out somewhere else and you'll end up looking as though you're behind the ball.
Yeah. So the sort of switch from supporter to behind the scenes, obviously you mentioned you've done the sort of the well-worn path of involved in the supporters club and then so on and so on, and suddenly finding more and more to do.
Yeah, and I switched from supporter. I'm still
sorry, just the support. Sorry, just someone like me just turning up, watching the game, and then going, right, see ya. Yeah. So through the supporters club, and then obviously, as you said, onto the program. So when did you get the joy of the PA? You said it was about 35 years ago.
That was 1986. I took that up when we first joined the Vauxhall Conference. It was 1986, and then I took up the press secretary October '88. My first game.
Right.
My first game was the FA Cup tie at home to Walton. In the Coventry season. '88. Within 3 months of taking it on, I was having to look after the nation's media at the FA Cup game against Coventry, and everything, all the peripherals around that game as well. So it was a bit of a baptism of fire.
Yeah, that's the season I started. In fact, that's the month and the year I started supporting the club as well.
Oh, right.
October '88.
Yeah, well, my first game was the FA Cup tie at home to Walton and Hersham, where I was responsible for it.
Wow, excellent. So obviously that was a nice baptism of fire, but it notched up over the years. The story I love telling is I didn't go to Coventry game because I was just a new supporter, so I felt I didn't deserve to go, and there'll be other big games along soon. And we jumped 30 years for the other big game. But I remember at the time you kind of had to take time off your normal job to get involved with all the media. The Arsenal?
Yeah, well, it was yes. At that stage I was still working. I'm not working now, but at that stage I was still working. And I took, there's only so much holiday you can take, and I took a day off for the pre-weekend press conference against Wimbledon, where we had a few media down. And then I took a day off for the pre-weekend conference against Leeds, where we had quite a few more media down. But the Arsenal game, the week before, was half term. And the week before the game was half term. And of course, by the time I knew we were going to do that, other people in the office where I worked who'd got families had booked the half term holiday. And there wasn't enough cover for me to take the time off. So I ended up having to sort of get people to help out with that one, and ended up watching the entire world's media, watching it on my computer at work, which was a slightly bizarre feeling. But I got some time off around I was able to get the day of the match off and spent the whole day over there because I thought I wanted to take it all in. So it was, but yes, it was quite a hectic time. And when suddenly, just before the Arsenal game, when you thought it was all organised, and then some of the bigger organisations phoned up and said, "Oh, we just thought we'd like to do this. We just thought we'd like to do that," and you're trying to squeeze that in as well. The One Show was the one that didn't. The One Show got in touch with us, I think, on the Friday to ask if they could come and effectively spend most of the afternoon at the club. And they enjoyed it so much they didn't want to go, and they actually stayed there for the game with a late change of plan. But we sorted everybody out, and everybody was quite happy with the way it all worked in the end. And we think we everybody involved in the media side ended up at the thing that it was from a media hospitality point of view and looking after the media, it was a job well done.
Yeah, I mean it must have been exhausting, but quite satisfying because I think again there was messages at the time saying we were told it's going to be notched up to 11, and we were like, no, we'll be fine. And then it was like, oh my god, I didn't realise how much interest there really would be on this.
Oh no, it was phenomenal. I mean, we had to get in touch with Solihull Moors to ask if a Norwegian film crew could go to the away game there the week before the game, because they wanted to do a feature on us. It was just sort of things like that really took the time. But I would never say it was out of control. So it was always under control. We had everybody sort of accommodated in the ground. And as I say, at the end of it, we had a lot of very nice letters from people who'd been with us through the cup run, saying how much they'd enjoyed it and grateful for us to looking after them and all the best for the future.
Yeah, I mean, I one of the things I was going to say to you, and I've mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast, is obviously on Twitter the reach of seeing people talking about Sutton United. And there was, I don't remember his name, but there was a reporter at some point last season who just said, I've just had the nicest email from Sutton United confirming my press credentials or whatever they called it. And he said, I can't explain why it was so nice. It's just, it was such a nice email. And there's been so many.
Right, I missed. You must find out who that was, because I don't think I've heard that one. Okay. I don't think I've heard that one before. We had one. We had one after the Tranmere game the other week when somebody who normally commentates on national television came down to help out with the Tranmere commentary and put quite a nice tweet up saying how much they'd enjoyed their day with us. But,
Nigel
Adderley.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that one. It's just a standard standard email we send out to everybody who's coming to the game, just telling them what to do.
He did say, I can't explain exactly what was so nice about it. It's just it was really nice email. He said compared to other clubs who just really like whatever. He said it just seemed like they really cared. I'll try and find it and I'll try and screenshot it and send it to you. But yeah, I've got lots of comments because I've spoken doing this to other reporters as well from Colchester, Carlisle, Tranmere as well, and they've all said really nice things about how we do things as a club. And as you were mentioning about the Arsenal game, where we've managed to get everyone in. It is a club that, and you take a lot of credit for this as well, it gives you a sense of pride as a supporter to know that we're helping everyone do what they need to do.
And I think with the FA Cup run, the FA Cup run as well, there were a few who were sort of with us from the Wimbledon game and came back for the Leeds game and came back for the Arsenal game. So we actually got to know some of the national radio people quite well. By the time the Arsenal game had been finished, and some more local reporters as well who were with us all through the cup run.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to Sutton United Talk Time on podcast, the Sutton Podcast. If you are new to the show, hello, and you are very welcome. Hope you enjoy what we do. It's a very simple format. We get a few people on to talk about the game that's just gone, and then we preview the next game coming up. We are available on most podcast platforms where you can listen, rate and review. If you find that we're not on your preferred platform, please let me know and I'll sort that for you. If anyone would like to support the podcast, you can find out how with more information on the website, which is www.suttonpodcast.com, and there's a tab where you can find out how to be a guest as well. Please find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok with the username @SuttonPodcast. Every like, follow and share is really appreciated. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Obviously, the Arsenal game was quite a big moment, but what other kind of parts of the job or moments of the job were you really sort of, I've done good there, or I've enjoyed that?
Sutton United Talk Time on podcast, the Sutton Podcast. If you are new to the show, hello, and you are very welcome. Hope you enjoy what we do. It's a very simple format. We get a few people on to talk about the game that's just gone, and then we preview the next game coming up. We are available on most podcast platforms where you can listen, rate and review. If you find that we're not on your preferred platform, please let me know and I'll sort that for you. If anyone would like to support the podcast, you can find out how with more information on the website, which is www.suttonpodcast.com, and there's a tab where you can find out how to be a guest as well. Please find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok with the username @SuttonPodcast. Every like, follow and share is really appreciated. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Top and then 2-3 underneath, and I said something like the scoreboard says, I can't remember, I said 2-3 in the 23rd or something like that, and I thought afterwards that was quite sort of
I like that.
off the top of your head, that was quite sharp. But I tend not to. I tend after most games to be fairly happy if everything's gone all right. I'm fairly happy. But in specific incidents over the years, doing the match when I did the match program, I did that for a long time as well. Although not as long as Lyle's been doing it. And occasionally I looked at the program and thought, yeah, that was a decent program. I think that the program we did with a guy called Ian, who's not involved with the club anymore, but in the one season we had under John Raines in the conference in 1999-2000, I always look back at that and think, yeah, that was a good program. We absolutely nailed it for that season. I think we came second in the league program awards behind Hayes.
All right.
But I don't.
All right.
It helps if we've won.
Yeah.
If we've lost. If we've lost and there's been a slightly awkward interview had to be done afterwards and stuff like that, and a couple of times when interviews didn't go quite as they ought to have done after the match because there was we had to either skate round issues or we didn't skate round issues and had to decide that we should have skated round them after all. They're the slightly less satisfactory, but overall I don't tend to stop and think too much about it. It's just getting on with it, enjoying it, and thinking back afterwards. That was a decent game. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, because
if people come up to you, if people come sort of find you out on the way out, look you out on the way out home and say, "Oh, we're off now, but thanks very much for looking after us and thoroughly enjoyed it," then that's what you like.
Yeah. So you mentioned the after-match interviews, and I have often thought of that must be quite tricky, especially after for example. I don't remember the interview or anything, but the Doncaster match where we've lost in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah.
So situations like that must be difficult.
Yeah, and I owe Donovan Wilson an interview from a game when we've done well because he'd scored and I sort of lined him up, decided I'd line him up anyway, and he came out after we lost, and it was good of any player to come out. So I feel as though I owe him one later in the season when he's hopefully when he scored a hat-trick and we've had a decent win. But he can come out and talk to us in slightly happier circumstances. But yeah, it is. I mean, even last Saturday, obviously it was a huge disappointment.
Yeah.
And Matt came out, but I've got to pay credit to Matt. He's brilliant with the post match interviews. He always does them. He's always. I'm never worried about what he's going to say. And that's quite a relief actually, because there have been times in the past when I've interviewed a manager and I've just been a little bit concerned about how things might go.
Yeah, we're not going to name names, are we?
We're not going to name names, but I don't think it took me a long time to recover from the Truro at home interview. But there we are now. Matt is brilliant. And he's very good. And I have to say as well, the players, by and large, if you ask them to come out for an interview after the game, they will do it, win or lose. They realise that somebody's got to cut. It's nice. The supporters like to see a player.
Yes. So do you?
And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes they want to call, but generally they'll quite happily come out and have a chat. And it doesn't have to be particularly eloquent necessarily. It's just get the interview, get an interview done, and just get a few opinions from the players. Some players are better at interviews than others, as in the Premier League. Some players are natural interviewees, some not so. So they all come out and they all do it, and for that point of view, I'm quite grateful.
So do you get to choose, or do you ask for someone, or do you just say, "Can someone come out"?
We've normally got an idea of who we want.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally it'll be a couple. I mean, normally it'll be determined by what's happened in the game. But last Saturday was a slightly more difficult one because there wasn't anybody. Sam Hart came out. He got the man of the match in the end. He came out and did a really good interview. It'll be determined by what's happened in the game. If somebody scored a hat trick, like when Killian or Topi came on and scored late on, they were the obvious ones to choose. But we'll tend to choose one before and then we'll say Matt or Tim will be around and say, "Do you want a player?" And we'll say, "Yeah, can we have so and so?" And normally they'll become. Occasionally if things have been held up a bit and they've gone, and I have to get somebody else out. But generally we'll get the person we want, and they're very good and always quite cheerful when they come out.
I can't remember if you did it. Did you do the Tope signing one? where he signed for us.
We did Tope. I think after we played Charlton, we did.
No,
we did the
when
interview with
he
him.
was it you that when? Yeah, so when just after he signed, I loved that interview. I loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
It was sheer unbridled enthusiasm.
Did the
from somebody
smile on his face, and I was like,
couldn't quite believe what. Yeah,
I'm going
and
to
he's
love
like
this
that. He is like that. I mean, when you speak to him, he is that sort of person.
Yeah, no,
They all are. They're a very, very good group to get on with.
Yeah,
and it makes my job a lot easier.
Absolutely, yeah. And also earlier on we mentioned the commentary. So anyone who used to listen to the Mixlr or listen to the Mixlr for some of the games, especially the academy games, would hear you on that. But you're also on the iFollow, which a lot of us don't so much because we're usually at the games as well.
Yeah.
So, but you double that up. I always smile when especially at the academy matches like last week. When you're doing it, and then the stadium announcement as well, and it's just so you're multitasking.
Yeah, it's easier to do. It's easier to do it. It's easier to do it when it's a Mixlr commentary, because Mixlr commentaries these days I tend to do on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot easier to do than if you've got a computer in front of you or a large piece of broadcast equipment like we have for doing the iFollow, which is done through a professional ISDN, a sort of proper ISDN line with the sort of equipment that you see the reporters using on sort of national radio and national. I have to credit our Radio 5 Link Sahale. He was a real help when we were looking for that equipment at the start of last season, and gave us some really, really valuable guidance about what we should go for and what we didn't need to go for and what we could go for instead. So very grateful to him on that.
Yeah. And I know Ahmed's very grateful when you're at the ladies' matches and he's missed something and you're just Tony, what was that? Yeah. It always makes me smile because I listen to the away matches always. Tony, Tony's there. So you go to all the ladies' away matches, or?
I've been to two so far.
Okay.
Went to Dulwich and I went to Herne Bay.
Okay, so I happened to hit both of them.
And Ahmed was doing the commentary. I'd have to say about multitasking, Ahmed's been excellent as well on 2 or 3 occasions, because we were little bit short last week, and he now works, and it's a real feather in the cap of the club, and for giving him the chance. But he's now doing some Radio London work, quite a lot of Radio London work.
Mm-hmm.
And he was covering the game for Radio London last week, and agreed with them that he could also commentate for us. So.
Wow.
he was doing our commentary on the ISDN, but every so often we had Radio London coming through our earpieces as well, and every so often Ahmed had to say, just sort of put his hand up, and then I couldn't talk for the next, and suddenly he'd go into Radio London mode of doing a quick score update.
Wow.
He's done that 2 or 3 times. He did it at Mansfield last season when I got COVID after the cup final, Papa John's final, and couldn't go up there.
Yeah.
So he's been excellent in that. He's excellent in that respect. Occasionally, he's happy to do it, but. Delighted for him. He's got all the Radio London work now.
Yeah, no, very, very.
It's a feather in our cap as well. You know, he came down to us as wanting to answering an advert for people to get involved on the media side, and has done very well.
Yeah, I mean, I've had Will Lawless on from the Sports London scene as well.
London football scene. Yes.
Sort of explaining that he just sort of randomly asked, and he was like, "Oh my god!" They said yes. And it was like,
yeah, no,
really nice.
Yeah, they've been covering all of us, and they finally got somebody to come down. They managed to find somebody who could be a dedicated Sutton reporter. So he comes to all the home games.
Yeah.
All the home games now, and it's good because you get continuity of coverage, and
absolutely
he gets to know the club.
He gets to know the club and the players, and
if you've got the same reporter coming down every week, yes, it does help. It does help because they get to know the club. If you've got a different one coming down every week, at times you feel as though you've got to start from scratch again.
Of course, yeah.
But it's good having the continuity.
Excellent. Well, what's the next 5 years going to bring for us?
Ooh, good grief. I mean, what's 5 years gone? 2017. If you'd asked me that question at the beginning of the 2017-18 season, would I have said we're going to be in the way of this? We're going to be. I struggle up. We're in our second season. Say an established football league club. But would I have said we'd be in our second season as a football league club, having just missed out on the playoffs and reached Wembley in our first season? Yeah. Probably not.
No.
who knows what that, it could. I always say I wouldn't put anything past this group of players
No.
if they set their mind to it. We've had good times. There are down times as well. We've got long injury list and subsequent issues that's going to bring in terms of results and stuff at our level. I honestly wouldn't like to predict what will happen in 5 years' time. As I say, if you said in 2017, would Sutton be a football league club in 2022? I'm not sure many people would have said yes.
No.
A few might have, but I'm not sure that many people would have said yes. And I remember at the end of that season when we were within one game of getting to the playoff final when we lost to Boreham Wood. And I think even then, I don't think many people could see us as a football league club.
No. Anyone,
possibly a few more once when we got to the position where we won the National League and were being promoted, a few more. But even then, it wasn't the natural thing to think at the end of that season, we're going to win this league and we're going to be a football league club.
Yeah. It's insane. I mean,
but I honestly, if we get through this season, then we've had 2 seasons as a League Two club. We can look to build it, but it could. It would be very difficult at the moment to predict what will happen over the next 5 years. But if we're still in 5 years' time, if we're still a League Two club, I think that would have to. There are some people who probably wouldn't regard that as success because they might think by then we ought to have been pushing to go, push up to League One. But I'm not sure a club of our size, if we're still a League Two club in 5 years' time, I reckon we can say that we've done pretty well, and we then can call ourselves an established football league side.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you go back all those years, to say that whatever happens this season, it's going to be our second highest league finish in history if we finish below 7th. No matter what, it's the second, and we're upset at losing in the first round of the FA Cup. And all those years ago, we had to get through some qualifying rounds as well to get there.
I know it does. It works like that. And that FA Cup result, that's what Farnborough did to us. What we've done to clubs,
exactly.
What we've done to clubs in the past, and it's hard to begrudge. If I'm honest, I think a draw would probably have been a fair result because we dominated the first half so much. But it's hard to begrudge them the fact that they came. They played very well. They defended for their lives. They had a goalkeeper who had a blinder. It did rather have tones of the Billericay game for quite a long time. All it needed was Jack Turner to go up the other end in the last minute and score, and it would have been complete. But he didn't have to. So it's difficult to, it's difficult to begrudge Farnborough their success last week.
No.
And there are different ways of looking at a second round draw away to Wrexham. I suspect if it had been us, it would have been actually nailed on to be on live television and with all the financial rewards of that. But it would have really, in terms of a game, I can't think of many that you'd want less than to want to in the second round of the cup and go to Wrexham.
Yeah.
But,
I think Dan did say that we've got an appalling record up there anyway. So
don't think we've ever won up there. We've drawn a couple of times.
Yeah.
Ross Lafayette's famous goal.
Yes.
Got us a 1-1 draw up there. We've drawn a couple of times, but we've never won up there. Although, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure they've, apart from in the FA Trophy, which doesn't really count because we weren't at the same level then. But in terms of league football, I don't think they've ever won at Sutton either. So it's one of those. It's one of those where home advantage has always been to the fore. But no, we've never won up there, and we did. It was the one place where we got severely beaten in our championship season. Mm-hmm. Although there were huge mitigating circumstances that day that I think I was not surprised the result ended up the way it did, given what had happened earlier in the day and the journey that the players had up there.
Mm-hmm. And that's also, I mean, I'm going to wrap up in a moment, but that's also changed dramatically over the last sort of few years of the journeys getting up there. So I know we do some overnights now as well, don't we?
Oh, we do. Most of them are overnights if they're sort of north of. Northampton's a Tuesday night this year, but I can't remember last year. I didn't do Northampton. I can't remember who did Northampton, but most of the trips of any distance are now done going up on a Friday. Sometimes they'll arrange to train at a place up in agree with the club they can use a training facility up north, or they'll train at Harlington and then go up after that. But yeah, be up there on the Friday, have an overnight stay, and then be fairly relaxed for the game on the Saturday. Whereas even in the National League, even the year we won it, it was going up on the train on the day of the game. And we had a few famous issues with trains and stuff. How after the journey they had to Hartlepool on the first day of Matt's first season, how on earth they managed to win 3-1, I'm not quite sure. Because that was a nightmare journey in terms of crowded trains and everything. And there's still when you go to Hartlepool, there's still quite a bit of journey to do. Once you get off the train, you've got a coach from either Darlington or York to go to Hartlepool as well. But they were quite good days, because we always we used to have a few supporters with us as well, and I always remember just about 2 months before COVID hit, we were at Stockport and we'd done that one up and back in the day on the train, and people who've been to Stockport, there's a pub roughly halfway between the ground and the station, and we left the ground and we were about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour before the train we were all booked on. And the club virtually took over this pub, just on the roundabout at the top of the station approach. And you had players, you had management, you had directors, you had supporters, and it was just a wonderful, a bit like your email correspondent. I can't actually say why it was so, but it was just, you felt everybody was in there. They were all together. Everybody was talking to everybody else. It was a wonderful atmosphere, which you're not going to get so much these days because the players are doing it overnight. But I quite understand why they're doing it. They do an overnight stay, and I think it's absolutely right that they do an overnight stay. But that's just one of the things you might miss a little bit is just occasionally. I think Leeds Station, after we played at Harrogate as well, was a similar situation once. Just that feeling of everybody being together and having a drink together and a chat together in a far distant away game is quite a good feeling.
Yeah, especially after a win.
Especially after a win, or even a draw at Stockport, because that was just after they'd been bought out and they were full of they packed them in and they were convinced they were going to win, and we got a 0-0 draw and would have won if Tommy Wright hadn't miskicked about 5 minutes from the end.
Lovely. Well, thank you very, very much.
No problem.
I'll wrap it up there. If there's anyone who wants to have a go at the PA, just give you a shout. Not me. I'm not offering. Don't worry, everyone. It's okay. I'm not necessarily looking to get her. I just think there are probably people out there who would be very good at it, and who would now provide a different, it's a taste of music. It's a taste of music as well. I was getting grief for that earlier in the season. Well, Wimbledon did. Nobody picked up, or if they did, they didn't say anything. And the first home game after that, there'd been a little exchange on the forum about that. The first tune I played over the half-time interval was the same old song by the Four Tops. But it's one of those things. The music is an issue. We're trying to upgrade it a bit. We use CDs still at the moment, so it's got to be a CD that somebody's got in their collection to use, and it is, as a result, it is naturally going to be a little bit older stuff.
Well, like I say, a little bit tailored to the musical taste of the person who's doing it.
Yeah.
And if my pop tastes generally are sort of 80s, 70s, 80s, bit of 90s stuff, then unfortunately
that's what you're getting.
That's what a lot of people are going to get. I mean, we have got some CDs of more recent tracks that we play, but the vast majority are CDs from sort of 70s, 80s, 90s, and I try to mix it. I always say what I would like is just occasionally somebody to come up to me after a game when I've done it and said, "Oh, that record you played, I haven't heard that for ages, and it's really good." And sometimes I wonder about being a bit ambitious. At the end of a couple of seasons ago, I played an old 80s track by a group called the Freshies, called I'm in Love with a Girl at a Certain Manchester Megastore Checkout Desk. Something like that was the title, which I remember from the early 80s and found it on a CD I'd got. And I think I did say afterwards, I think that's probably the only ground where you're going to hear that this afternoon. But No, it's if I'm quite open to somebody taking it over if they wanted to, and if they were good at it. But otherwise, I'll just keep on and
You keep on keeping on.
keep on, and it'll be the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
The same. Yeah, we try and get some up to date CDs. Jason is very good at doing up to date CDs for me, which I can duck into as well at the same time. But if you want a CD, for when the fan zone's open, then it's probably going to be a compilation thing, so I can go away and do the other stuff I'm supposed to be doing without having to worry about what the next track's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. All right, perfect. Thank you very, very much, Tony. We'll see you soon.
No worries, mate.
And take care. Thank you.
See everyone on Saturday. Okay, cheers. That's probably the only ground where you're going to hear that this afternoon. But no, it's if I'm quite open to somebody taking it over if they wanted to, and if they were good at it. But otherwise, I'll just keep on and
you keep on keeping on.
Keep on, and it'll be the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
The same. Yeah, we try and get some up to date CDs. Jason is very good at doing up to date CDs for me, which I can duck into as well at the same time. But if you want a CD, for when the fan zone's open, then it's probably going to be a compilation thing, so I can go away and do the other stuff I'm supposed to be doing without having to worry about what the next track's going to be.
Yeah, exactly. All right, perfect. Thank you very, very much, Tony. We'll see you soon.
No worries, mate.
And take care. Thank you.
See everyone on Saturday. Okay, cheers.
United! 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 United!